Why is it that no one wants to work anymore, especially in this generation? Generation full of streamers, content creators, pseudo entrepreneurs. No one really likes the idea of working anymore. And I'm talking about from a young age. Between the age of 16 to 25, you talk to the average kid and they're like, nah, I don't want to work, man. I'm just going to do something online. And there's nothing wrong with doing anything online, but people need to understand that work is a necessary part of life. Even taking me all the way back to when I was 16, my first ever job was working on a construction site. 16 years old, and I was actually eager and excited to go out there and work. Not because it was my final destination, but I knew A, I'm going to have some income coming in. B, I'm probably going to build some skills, whether it's talking to people, being purposeful, or being resourceful, I should say. Like when I was on the construction site, I would quite literally help people smash down walls, pick up some debris, have a mask on, screw some stuff in. And I learned a few things when I was there. And I also learned that I don't want to ever be part of that industry as well, but that's a separate point. And then after that, I had a job working in retail. I was working at a gas station, in a grocery store, taught me, some customer service skills. I've also worked in security. I've done door-to-door sales before. Currently, I'm in software sales, right? So the point I'm making is, when I was younger, I knew that work was a necessary part of life. It was a necessary step. But nowadays, when you look at the younger generation, of course, there's many reasons, but their minds have been clouded by thinking 5 steps ahead or 10 steps ahead when you don't even know what your next step is. So you've got a young kid nowadays thinking about how they're going to make 10, 20, 30K a month starting a fully fledged business, but you've never worked a job in your life. See, the thing about work is never undermine the effectivity of work. Work teaches you the necessary skills. You won't notice it in the moment. That's why I said hindsight is very powerful. But they compound over time. Every single job I've ever worked has taught me something. Every entrepreneur you see, every current business owner, every content creator, every streamer has learned a set of skills doing something that they didn't want to do. And it kind of goes on to my first thing, which is how people see work nowadays. People see work as black or white, 0 or 1, binary, right? I either work and I ruin my life and I throw away my dreams, or I don't work and for some reason, apparently, not working is going to allow me to fund my dreams. Because if I work, I won't be able to find my passion, which is pretty stupid. And if you think about it, we've been sold a lie when it comes to work, which is something I try to teach all young kids. Work isn't the final destination. Work isn't meant to be your passion. You go to work to build a set of skills. You go to work to earn income. And if there's a career progression and there's a decent ceiling, you go up the ladder. What you do after that, the choice is yours. Also, think about it like this. If you've got an empty bucket, you've got no skill sets, no life experience, work actually teaches you a lot. Some of the best entrepreneurs out there were once upon a time employees. In order to be an employer, you need to know what it's like to be an employee sometimes, so you can not only hire the best talent, but you also know how to manage them, and you also know what it's like to be them. So again, it goes back to my point. What is it that you expect out of life? If you're a young person, you just sat there stressing over the idea that, if I start working a job, man, I'm going to throw my life away. But then you're sat at home having done nothing with your life. And as I said, it's the passion lie. You've been told from young, since you were in school, when you find your job, find something that you're passionate about and you will never have to work a day in your life. What an awful quote. Because it makes people dig for something that you're probably not going to find. I can promise you, the way the world's set up, work can never be your passion. Unless, I think it's called the ikigai, there's these circles that intersect. If it's something that you're passionate about, something that pays, and something, I guess, that makes you competent, I probably butchered that, then I guess it can be your purpose. But for most of us, for example, me being in software sales, if you're watching this video and you're probably in DevOps or you're doing law or you're probably in some other high-level job, you know that your job isn't your passion. But you know it is a necessary evil in order to gain skills, gain the network, gain income so you can fund whatever it is you want to do. Kind of goes on to my next point, which is something that I analyze with most young people is, anyone that I see that complains about how horrible and mundane their job is, despite it being high skilled, they don't have hobbies. 10 times out of 10, anyone that complains about their job and how horrible it is working and how it makes them burn out doesn't have hobbies. Most people I know that recognize a job as a necessary evil, good skill, pays the bills, allows me to fund whatever it is that I want, also has hobbies. They play football, they go to the gym, they spend time with their friends in a cafe, they play paddle, the list goes on. Never will you find these people just sat there at home twiddling their thumbs, because you know when you don't have a hobby, you have no choice but to see work as everything. I'll give you a equal analogy or parallel, right? If you are with your partner and your partner's your best friend, and I know some people are probably not gonna like hearing this, but your partner can be your closest friend, but they can't be your everything. A man can have a wife. His wife can be his closest friend, but a man also needs male friends. Work is the same thing. If you are the man and your work is your missus, you're gonna always clash. But when you clash and there's tension between you two, where are you gonna go? You see my point? And this is what a lot of people don't understand. This is where the formula goes wrong. You spend all of your time going to work, stressing about work, having a lot of tension, but you don't have anything to look forward to outside of work. That's what I learned working in a corporate space. If I've got hobbies outside of work, it changed everything. Work is still tiring, work is still stressful, but at least you know you've got some creative outlets. Whether that's creating content, whether that's working on your side hustle, whether that is going to see your friends and playing football or doing whatever it is you want to do. It makes a world of a difference. If you're watching this video and you're probably thinking to yourself, that's a good idea. Let me list out some hobbies that you can start if you're a man. You know, women, I guess you guys can cater for yourselves. If you're a man and you don't do any physical exercise, I promise you physical exercise is the antidote to burnout in a workspace. Go join a martial arts club. Reason why I always tell people to join a martial arts club is martial arts club actually promotes and advocates social cohesion. Like when you go to a martial arts club, you actually feel included. When you go to the gym, you don't necessarily feel included because I'm not going to get into it, but the gym's full of vain people. It breeds individualism. It's me, the set, the rep, bicep curl. Whereas an MMA gym, you're going to have to spar with someone. Sparring means you're going to have to socialize with someone. And it actually allows you not only to get a physical workout in, do some cardio, it also allows you to bond with someone. You can make a lot of good friends there. Even when I was going jiu-jitsu, I made a lot of good friends there. You see them regularly from all walks of life. Some are in the corporate space, some have a business, some are just in college or university, some are unemployed. It brings everyone together. Another one you can do is, if you're a niche kind of person, join a chess club. Do something that stimulates your mind, or find a paddle club. The point I'm making is, if you feel like work is horrible and you're thinking of leaving, even though it's a high paying role, it's a good skill set, and you worked hard to get into it, gain a hobby and come back to this video. Because I promise you, when you gain a hobby or when you pick up a hobby, it makes everything more manageable and you're less emotional. Another thing, right, to even add to this, most young people nowadays are so emotionally dysregulated that they don't even know what's good or what's bad for them. I've helped many people land roles. And one thing that I learned from, I would say 80% of them, is a lot of young people have never been taught how to regulate their emotions. So what ends up happening to most of these people is they'll start a job they've worked really hard to get into. They would have one bad day. We've seen this across social media. All I need is one bad day at work and I'm packing my bags. That isn't really smart. It means you're very impulsive, very dysregulated, and pretty childlike. So many people have done it. I've helped people land tech roles. I've helped people land normal roles. Believe it or not, I'll get a message once in a blue moon. Yo, Dino, I can't lie to you, man. I left that job. I had an argument with my boss and I just packed my bags. There's a thin line between prioritizing and standing up for yourself and just being a kid. And sometimes we can't tell the difference. I notice most young people are so emotionally dysfunctional that they can't even stomach and tolerate a job. You go to work today, you clash with someone, because you can't regulate your emotions, boom, I'm packing my bags. And what's the alternative though? The point I'm making is, when people say, I don't want to work anymore, what is the alternative? Because any skill set you see online, and this is the problem we have, and let's actually even talk about this. Social media has made things seem a lot easier than they actually are. People will come on the internet and say, yeah, I changed my life in 6 months. All I did was learn this skill. Let's address a few things out there. Number one, God's timing is unmatched. You can't beat God's timing. God can literally plan for me to become a billionaire in a year's time, I don't know how I would do it now. Something might click tomorrow. I'll launch a startup. Boom, goes from 0 to 1. God can do that. But that's not something you can rely on because you don't know where it's going to come from and you don't know if it's going to happen. That's one thing people don't factor in. Number two, a lot of people won't teach you the skills that they had beforehand that compounded and accumulated to make them competent enough to take that decision. Let me kind of give you guys a bit more context. If I'm someone that is 22 years old, my entrepreneurial age may be 7. I may have been grinding since I was 15 years old, but I'm still 22. Most people don't understand this concept because they think, oh, he's 22, he's so young. If a kid's been clued up since he was 15 and he's been trying things for 7 years, it still means it took 7 years for something to click. But why is it we can't think that far? But then they will come on the internet and of course, marketing, selling stuff, you obviously invoke people's emotions, you get people excited, you get people riled up. If I tell you I'm a 22-year-old and I made $5 million last year, that's going to sell much better than me telling you I've been grinding for 7 years and on the 8th year it took off. Of course. But as a young person watching this video, you also need to be mentally clued up. This is one of the reasons why most people cannot work because they think to themselves, oh, there's an opportunity out there. There's a 19-year-old that made $10 million last year. Again, what was that 19-year-old doing? What skill sets did he cultivate? How long did those skills take him to build? And also, what are his previous endeavors? All of these things matter because if you're someone that has got 0 skill sets and you're currently doing nothing with your life, come on. I'm not even sitting here advocating for working and just being someone that just works for the rest of their life. Even though if you think about it, we will be working for the rest of our lives. If you own a business, you're going to be working, right? It just depends on what type of work you're doing and how purposeful it is. But my point is, the formula for me has always been simple. You work, you gain skills. You use those skills to leverage another skill and get another job. You get that job, you work, you build up your skills, and now you've got a choice. If you've been working for 3 to 5 years in a good industry with good leverageable skill sets, you can go start a business or you can keep building your skills. I know people in the tech industry or even other industries earning multiple 6 figures a year. If I told you you could get a job earning you $300,000 or pounds a year, even living here in the UAE, no tax, so you're earning basically 25 to 30K pounds a month, you would be comfortable and you wouldn't even care. It's just a job. As I said, you would have that job, have hobbies, have investment portfolios, and you're good. Now it's just all about laying your cards right so that you can inevitably get out of it. Now, to go back to the job market itself, because there's probably someone watching this video that's thinking to themselves, yeah, I do want to work, but it's so hard to find a job. I'm going to dedicate the rest of this video to this. When I was getting jobs back in the days, you could get away with just work ethic. You can get away with just being at the right place at the right time and just being a volume machine, sending out so many applications. Now, the reason why I love the job market nowadays is it separates who's actually competent and who isn't competent socially in terms of soft skills. I am so glad we live in an era where degrees and certifications don't matter as much anymore. Because guess what? Once upon a time, you could get a first class and you would directly get a job. Nowadays, you got a first class, you don't know how to communicate, you don't know how to conduct yourself, you don't know how to handle pressure in an interview situation. See you later. Mr. No degree here who's a dropout is going to get that job. As long as the job doesn't require a degree, that is. So a lot of people have kind of overlooked the power of soft skills. And I advise people in an era of brain rot, in an era of just sitting at home and not socializing with people, the biggest ROI skill ever is to build your social skills. I've even got a free community that you can join, and the link's going to be in the description, that helps you build your social skills and your confidence, because you can have all the technical skills. Some of my friends work in DevOps and they're actual programmers, coders in cybersecurity. I'm in sales. For me, I have to know how to communicate. But even for those jobs, whenever you talk to them and you ask them, oh, what's the reason why most people fail their interviews? Believe it or not, majority of the time is because of soft skills. Do you know what the biggest thing that most interviewers say? You know, Dino was at the interview and it seemed like he wasn't interested. I know why they say that, because there's a difference between what's in your mind and what your body language shows that a lot of people don't acknowledge. If you really want the job, but you're nervous and your baseline body language is to just be frozen. Yeah. So my technical background is, yeah, it actually looks like you're not interested. And this is the biggest feedback most people get. You know, it's a good candidate, had a good CV, had a good technical background, but it just didn't seem like he was enthusiastic. Soft skills. A lot of people say, oh, the job market is bad. Yes, the job market isn't as great as it used to be. But the greatest equalizer and the biggest separator is your ability to stand up, communicate, and be confident in your own ability. Another thing, the job market has changed massively. In this current job market, you actually have to do a lot more outreaching. Worst comes to worst, you even have to start creating content. I know so many people that create content on LinkedIn now, simply because they know if I create content, my video is going to be seen by someone, it's just increasing my odds. But how many of you guys are willing to do that? Every single young person I speak to that is complaining about there not being any jobs and how jobs are hard to get, I ask them this one question. What are you willing to do to get that job? Are you willing to post content? Are you willing to outreach? Are you willing to cold call? Are you willing to cold email? Are you willing to send a Loom video to a hiring manager? Most times they're going to say, nah, that's long, man. Why do I have to do that for a job? Then don't complain. That's literally been my point for a very long time. If you're complaining and you're not willing to put the work in, what are you really complaining about? So the job market in general nowadays reflects your own internal abilities. Long gone are the days where you can just have a certificate, walk through the door, hand in your CV, and they're going to say, you know what, we'll take a gamble on you. Keep that in your mind. And that's why people are very reluctant to work nowadays, because it forces them to be uncomfortable. Anyone you know that's currently employed and getting loads of interviews, bearing in mind, I know people and I train people to do well in interviews. And the biggest thing I take away from all of this is the people that are doing the shadow work, the internal work, that are putting the reps in, building themselves up, they get multiple interview offers. And in those interview offers, they typically do well. So the point I'm ultimately making is it's not that people in this generation do not want to work. It's because we've glamorized skipping steps. You need to understand that work is a necessary part of life. Whether that means working a regular job to build your business, whether that means getting into a high-level career to build yourself up so that you can use that income to access other things that you want to do, and you would also have a good network at that time. We've also overvalued feelings. Not every bad day at work requires you to leave your job. And ultimately, the way I see things is there has to be a necessary balance in life. You can be working, building your career in a grad scheme. You know, you're probably 3 to 5 years in. If you have a hobby on the side, takes away the burden from work. If you also have a long-term strategy and you're also thinking about what are my interests and passions, when you've got a skill set there already, you can have a good cracking next 10 years. And that's what I've planned for myself. People look at me and they say, you know what, how are you still working? Job pays the bills. Passions here are things that keep me going. Takes away the burden from work and life. I've got many other things that I do on the side, and I keep telling people, when you solidify that main breadwinner, you can then start to build other sources of income. Or it doesn't even have to be income. Not everything has to be monetized. The last thing I want to mention is the thing that helped reframe my life, or the way I feel about work and life in general, is if something brings you peace and it's a hobby that you don't monetize, don't let anyone gaslight you out of it. I promise you, mental fortitude and peace is the only thing we look for in life. If you work a job and you're a teacher or you're a UN worker, volunteer, and you're not earning a super or a large amount of money, and it brings you fulfillment because it aligns with your values, don't let anyone gaslight you out of it. End of the day, everyone is seeking fulfillment. The guy that has $1 billion may say he's unfulfilled. That $1 billion means nothing to him. There's someone working on a farm right now, you know, picking out his crops, has his family, his kids there, and has his cattle and his stock, and he's happy. He's fulfilled. That guy's happy. The billionaire's not happy. It's all about what aligns with your values. So ultimately, to part ways with this video, I want you to understand that work is a necessary part of life. Stop trying to skip steps and understand that if you have nothing going on in your life, if you have no skill sets, learn to climb those stairs. And it will eventually click what you're good at, what you're interested in. And you also have the income and the financial capabilities to fund it.